on the topic only of geography, is that we are trying to analyse places that didn't exist in the way they exist now.
That's it.
The parallel thing that's happening now is that we are stealing from nature, right? We're going through climate change, and therefore the intention isn't to preserve, it's to extract. Sovereignty is the reason why governments exist. The beauty of Brexit, should there be ever a word associated with Brexit, is the fact that it changed everything. When I run for Prime Minister one day, they'll bring out this clip and go, she said it.
This is it.
See, you're
and
part of this.
I want my money.
Time is money, so spend yours listening to me talk about things that are important to me and my people.
Time is money. Welcome to the final episode of the politics series. I'm joined with the incredible Busayo. She is a political powerhouse of knowledge, and if you've been listening thus far, you've probably changed who you vote for. If you want a reminder of last episode, this is a little clip.
How could she run when she was so close to Boris's reign that if you throw Boris out, most people who were attached to Boris left as well. Yeah. But she stays. And so everyone was like, this is just Boris
reincarnated.
Basically. And doesn't come across as someone who has her own views. She looks like someone who's given views. But she has one particular thing that she cares about, which is to be seen as very neoliberal and like, I want to do this. But then it's like, in the world that we live in, it makes you look dumb. Because how can you pursue such a liberal agenda? And when she came out with her and Kwasi Kwarteng came out with the budget, even the people who love money were like, or the billionaires were like, this is stupid. Nobody asks you to reduce the tax rate of the very rich. It's like someone in the playground who's in year 3 trying to dance for the year 6s.
And I'm going to kick off with my world news segment. So, a lot of people... Okay, I don't know about a lot of people, maybe just me. I didn't know that the Falkland Islands is actually situated next to Argentina, but belongs to the UK. And the UK just did a UK on them and just took it and just said, we need it, you don't, basically. And the war with Argentina to get it basically meant that they just froze Argentina out because they had so much resource, the UK this is, of military guns and nuclear, all that. So that just left Argentina having to just say, all right, cool, take it. However, it's called Islas Malvinas, and Islas is islands. I don't know what Malvinas is, but in Argentina you can't actually
say that.
Yeah, you can't call it Falklands, you have to call it that.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
So they get really angry, and obviously I know you know this already. However, the extra part of it, I was like, oh wow, I didn't even think. But speaking to this guy at work who really came out of the blue and shocked me, because he has been a man of few words thus far, but he suddenly turned around one day and I said something and I was just like, oh yeah, said something like, I don't know, like I was trying to make myself sound smart probably. And then he was just like, he came back with something really smart, like something you would say. And I was like, rah. And I was like, wow. And he was like, yeah, I did a politics degree. My master's is in blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah. Oh, I know, it was about my book. So I was trying to stunt that like I'm reading that book basically. But I wasn't even trying. I thought it was a wasted stunt on him. Like, who cares? But he actually's read the book and he did his whole thing on it and he whatever. So since then we've been talking politics deep.
Love that.
So I know, just didn't expect it. And he basically said, because I said the Falkland Islands thing to him again, trying to show off like I know something. And then he was just like, yeah, that's why when Argentina and England play football, it's the worst beef.
Yeah.
Because politically, that's why. And then he said he read this book on football hooliganism and all of it comes from political issues.
Yeah, football is more political than it is a sport.
Yeah. And then I thought that was quite a good thing to bring up here, because obviously, I don't know, by the time this comes out, it won't be the case, but we've just had the World Cup and loads of politics surrounding that and loads of international politics in particular. And it just made me think like how much more there is to delve into. So on that note,
That's good.
Thank you. Let's go a little further afield. And this is a real curveball, and it's inspired by, again, a book I've read. I find it really easy. You're probably the same. Actually, you might not be. I can just inhale autobiographies. Anything autobiographical, I can just read with no problem. I will read it in like a day sometimes. I finished a book in a day, like that. Factual stuff is harder for me to absorb. I need that emotional enjoyment. What is the real money for me is factual and autobiographical, because then I'm in. Then I'm learning as I'm emotionally, and it's just incredible. So the last book I read like that was called Against the Loveless World by Susan Abdullahi, I think her name is. Really, really good. And it's all about Israel and Palestine and their war, basically. And it really, really shone a light on it to me because I didn't know anything about it. All I've seen is that it sparked up, over the years in the media. Then something else comes and takes over and we don't hear about it anymore. But I'm under no illusion that it's still very real and happens even when we don't hear about it in the media. And we've spoken about it previously, very, very briefly. And I didn't know anything about it then. So I want us to have round 2 now that I know a little bit more.
Okay.
But it's going to be a controlled round 2.
Right.
Where we don't say anything which is going to be insensitive or ignorant to either side. And it's literally more you explaining how it started. So people who are like me, and I'm still obviously really not very knowledgeable about it, can understand a bit more because as something you've taught me, no matter how far something seems, it does affect you because everything has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And even though we're all the way here in the UK, we are still affected by things that are happening all the way in Palestine and Israel because we're all part of one globe. Obviously, you're going to be, look how we're affected by something happening all the way in Russia and we're all freezing off our class because of what's happening.
Yeah.
So that is my thinking behind this. So do you want to start it off? I mean, I ain't.
I guess in the most simplest terms, and it's good that you created that introduction because it is a sensitive topic. And I will try and say this in the most simple terms ever, which could probably get more problems. But it's basically, I'm saying this for you guys to read and listen.
Yeah, this is not your whole insight into it. This is your starter.
Yeah.
So you can go and do your own reading, make your own opinions, etc., etc.
So essentially, pre-20th century, pre-19th century, there were different empires. There was an empire called the Ottoman Empire, which covered like the Middle East area. And they were a big empire, but over time, because of the rise of different empires, they kind of lost influence. And that happens all the time. People rise and fall.
Ebbs and flows.
Ebbs and flows. So essentially, as the Ottoman Empire declined, I guess essentially, and states became a different way to organize people. So countries became a thing. Before empires were just like a big piece of land, you get one empire and many different groups of people. But then countries, states became a bigger thing because you kind of organize around more of a common ground, like on a lower level, not like because we just live in this area.
And that brings in nationalism as well.
It brings in nationalism. It talks about identity and all that kind of stuff and who belongs where. And when you do that, when people have been mixed for so long, people then wanted claims to certain places. And in that place, there was a place called Palestine that existed in the Ottoman Empire. And the British, obviously, they were rising. The Europeans were rising. And so what they kind of did was promise the place of Palestine to some Jewish Zionist people who basically were displaced. So basically in that same time the Ottoman Empire was declining, Europe and other places, they had beef with Jewish populations essentially and they kind of ousted them, they exiled them.
Fine.
So they didn't have a place to go.
Right.
And so...
And to deal with that, they're like, right, you can't stay here, we've got this gap over there.
We've got a place for you that you're going to...
go.
We promise to protect you in that place.
And that's going to be yours.
But that place was already given to Palestine. There was already Palestinians, there was already Arab people there. There was already people that lived there.
People who are native, rather. Not
that lived there.
So it's a bit of what we've got with America, where it was, we've discovered America. How can you discover something where there's already people there?
But also... who gave you the authority to tell someone that this is your land? Right?
Trust me.
So in that respect, but then obviously on top of those two political things that are happening, you've got religion that in people's religious books or religious teaching, people refer to these lands before empires and before states, which is obviously God's people or God's land, and they refer to them in different places. And therefore, if you are thinking about where your people belong, you might go as far back as religion and look at reference points there. So a lot of people who were, I don't know if it's even a bad word to call them Zionists, because I just feel like it's people who believe that there's a Jewish state, but some of them, not all of them, some of them kind of trace their heritage back to that area or an area there. And so what happened is that, and this was under the Balfour Declaration. So the Balfour Declaration, the man, I don't know his first name, but Balfour, British man, who basically said, this is like I've institutionalized it around 1917. Because I know I went to Israel and Palestine in like 2017 and it was like 100-year birthday.
Right.
Or something like that anyway. But yeah, so that happened. So there were some people living there, they moved into Palestine and stuff like that. Cool. So that's already one thing, but it's there. Then you've got the Second World War. And the Second World War is like the modern day a revision of how people feel about Jewish populations, right? And obviously we know the terrible history of how they tried to mass kill them and move them around and stuff like that. And so again, a lot more Jewish people are now talking about where do they belong in a place where they're not always going to be exiled.
Quote unquote, going home.
So then obviously the conversation of Israel was brought up again and be like, we belong here. So in masses, post-war, during war, people fled there. And so population-wise, they started to kind of number
That's it, yeah.
Palestinians in certain ways, or at least their presence was known there. And because they had a more modern history of like needing to rebuild very quickly, and it became a thing of two states in one area of land with two groups of people having claims to it. Of course, outside that there are Christian Arabs as well. So it's not just as clear cut as a Muslim and a Jewish conversation. I think it's sometimes it could be like the Arab, some people call like the Arab-Israeli conflict as well.
Yeah.
And again, people who are Israeli, some of them are Arab. So it's not as clear cut as
just
that.
ignorantly again as well. I just see it from food. Like I look at food, falafel, for example, is very common in a majority of cuisines, but it's actually from Israel. And then again in the book, when they're describing the kind of food they eat and stuff, that's food that I wouldn't have known as being Palestinian. I just thought that was more Middle Eastern as a whole. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not even there as well. So it's like a massive fusion, let's say. I think it's a fusion.
It is, because again, the thing about history, on the topic only of geography, is that we are trying to analyze places that didn't exist in the way they exist now.
That's it.
So when we think about Palestine or Israelis or Jewish people or whatever, Middle East or whatever we're going to call it, that was not what it was referred to at the time. And those people did not have such strict identities. So now we're going back and trying to create states which are more rigid for people who are normally people who don't live in those confines.
And I think this is such a relevant conversation when we speak about colonialism, because it's so easy for people, which I see so much, say, go home, or if you don't like it here, if the UK is that bad, why are you here, kind of thing. And obviously that's extremely reductive in an extreme case, but I know there's people listening who would have heard that directed at them or said it. So my point is, when we're saying this is the reason you can't just go home, because your home, which you saw as your home, was cut up, labelled to a label that doesn't make sense to you. It's the only thing I can mildly compare it to is gentrification. Absolutely 1% drop in the ocean of it, but that's what it is. From East London, I go to East London now. Stratford is like Dubai, and I say that because I'm comparing it to what it was. What it was a nasty place. You loved it. It was your home, but it was not nice.
Not a shiny building.
It was not a shiny building. It was not somewhere someone bragged about to live from. It was somewhere past 9 p.m. you had to walk through metal detectors. It was scary. It was dangerous. There's no other way to put it.
Of course.
And now there's a whole new boost of people. They've claimed East London. This is who they are. They're trendy. They work in the city. They don't buy, they rent, but the rent pushes up the prices of the houses, or they come in and they buy a house and that pushes out people who've been there for a long time. It's not nice. And then I look at older people like my mum, for example. If I go somewhere like Stratford, and when I lived at her house and she'd pick me up from somewhere, she'd be really overwhelmed because it doesn't look the same. And it's scary because this is not what I remember. And you're making it change for me. Do you know what I mean? It's ruining the community, you're ripping it up. And that is a tiny, tiny touch of what it's like when somewhere you know in your home, some outward alien to you, because you don't know them, the British or whoever, comes in and says, yeah, this is your house now. Your neighbour, they don't live here anymore. They live over there. Off you go.
And I think the conversation is even more tight because I guess the people that are gentrifying England tend to be privileged people, right? Whereas the people who are gentrifying other areas are refugees or political asylum seekers. So it's like people who are refugees coming into Stratford. It'll be a different conversation. It wouldn't be as, why are you here? It would be more like, oh my gosh, they're also vulnerable people, but also... So that's why the conversation is complex, because it depends on how you see the people coming in.
Yeah.
You might see, and then again, the difference between the government agenda and then the people. So I think a lot of the time it's like the government of whatever country and the people get the smoke for it. But then also we know that if you don't say nothing about it, then you're also just as bad type of thing. But then you've got another group of people who are like, okay, there's one aspect to be like, right, we were both promised this land, whatever, cool.
The promised land is cool.
Promised land. But then also, how comes now I'm a second-class citizen in this land?
Yeah.
For some people, they feel like they're second. So the conversation is so layered because it's like, even if we agree on one thing, the next layer will be like, well, now we're talking about human rights. And now we're talking about level of quality of life. Now we're talking about you can't access Palestine unless you go through Israel. You're talking about people who require passports to travel around their own country because they need to be identified. You're talking about bullet holes in people's houses just because their lives don't necessarily seem to matter on a public scale. You're talking about atrocities that happen that look the same as that conversation, who, if they weren't those people, would be seen as a crisis in society, and that's something that people need to come in and intervene. But when it's certain types of people, it doesn't seem the same conversation. So even if there's no side people are taking, I think just on a what's happening level, it's interesting to draw parallels to how now if these people wanted to come here, we will see them as like trying to come over to the country. But if it's a Ukrainian, we would be paid to open our houses up to them. You know, so the reason why Israel and Palestine conversation is so complex is, again, we're not getting into who we believe is wrong or right, because everyone has their own opinion on that.
Yeah,
fine.
we're not talking about that.
But what I will say is that it's so complicated because it represents and symbolizes a lot of what is going on in the world.
Yes.
And therefore, when you want to make a certain point or refer to it, you're also being able to draw parallels to other places. And the hypocrisy between maybe some of the Arab world, when they talk about Muslim brotherhood and solidarity, but when you look at Palestine, look at who invested in Palestine or who's got a lot of business deals with Israel, it's the same people that are saying... So I always see all this stuff as it's the political class against the masses.
Yeah.
I don't care what government you are, whatever. I think it's the people versus those people in charge, because they make decisions around us and make us feel like we have to believe certain things and hate our neighbour. When really they're sitting there playing games with each other whilst they'll tell us to hate this person. And that's why we're the fools, because it's like, guys, if they hate us so much, how much money are we really investing in these people? If we really know the spreadsheets, we'll be like, actually, it's peak.
Trust me.
And so there's a lot of that goes on. I think that's why the Qatar football is always interesting, because it's like Qatar's hosting it, but you are one of the wealthiest countries in the world. So how can one of the wealthiest countries or regions in the world be affiliated with one of the poorest countries in the world, or a country that is not recognised by half of the world? How do you know what I mean? It's like saying the Queen has a cousin who lives in poverty.
That does happen though.
But no, it does happen.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah,
why I'm looking at it like, it's so interesting. But then the Queen is now... So it's like, that's so interesting to me, where it's like, you don't even need anyone to support Palestine, because those who have a lot of money in that area could help Palestine.
Trust me. But it's the same as like, you know, with poverty or... Okay, let's take climate change. Probably is a bit layered, like you say. Climate change, it's forced on us, the masses, to recycle and go without whatever. But if just one or two of the most richest, you know, companies or whatever just cut their emissions, that would like put us ahead X amount of years.
100%. 100%. But what I will say, even though we're not getting into it, is
just
that...
to round
it off, what I will say is that I also do not agree with... Because of how controversial it is, sometimes we can't show empathy to people that we should show empathy to. And we said this before, maybe when we started recording, about what side of history do you want to sit on?
Yeah.
And as we spoke about in another previous episode about how courageous the next generation might be, we don't want to sit here in 20, 30 years' time and be like, because I was scared to say what the truth was, because I'm so scared of other people feeling us away. One thing for me is that I would hate to maintain friends or maintain a reputation at the expense of telling the truth.
Boy.
And so for the sake of this podcast, it's not my podcast, we will be very diplomatic about it. And 100%, as we all know, just because you identify as one person doesn't mean you agree or disagree, 100%. But I think as human beings, there's certain things that we need to be honest about.
Agree. Totally agree with you. And it's on you, the listener, to do your further research and to interpret that however you please.
Yes.
You mentioned in that brilliant synopsis of what's happening that people would say, oh, look at them, they're coming here. If, you know, Israelis or Palestinians
or white,
were to start to seek refuge in the UK. Do you believe that the pressure on the NHS is as much to do with immigration as they would have us believe? Because something that I hear quite often whenever this kind of conversation comes up, when it comes to the conversation of NHS, is well, that's why all the foreigners want to come here. Yeah, that's why, you know, NHS, you know, I'm not being funny, but if they close the borders or if they stop letting so many people in, you know what I mean? And then it starts to go a bit.
It goes,
So
left.
What do you reckon? Because I personally, you know, I've never been under the illusion when it comes to things like work ethic, when it comes to what we spoke about in a previous episode about working twice as hard. If we're the first generation, or our younger siblings, let's say, are the first generation we've seen to have a different outlook of like, I don't need to work as hard. Let's just say mine and your siblings. We're saying marginalised minority people in this conversation. They're the first generation to be a bit more like the white man, basically, than we were. And they are young. So that means generations and generations and generations before them would have been grinding 3 times, 4 times as hard. We worked twice as hard. Before us was 3 times and before them 4 times.
Yeah.
So I struggle to believe that we are all coming here, sitting on the NHS, bleeding it dry, sitting on benefits, bleeding that dry as well. Do you know what I mean? And when you do pull the statistics, you do see that it's actually generational poverty, and a lot of it is the white man. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah,
a bit more
because
diplomatically.
regardless of what happens in this country, white people are the majority. So any issue you have, it's going to be the majority. Like, there could be isolated issues that affect certain communities, but even if there was an issue that affected all Asian people, it's not enough to
outweigh
to even show up on the stats. Like, it's not possible. Like, 80% of the country, 85% of the country is white. So therefore, they like to pretend, and that's why when we talk about news and stuff, when they talk about issues, it's like, okay, you talk about an issue that affects a subpopulation, but most drug takers in the UK have to be white. Most people who rape people must be white. Like, most people who kill people must be white. That's a statistic, but they look for a sub statistic to make it look really just terrible. Like, most people who use knives are black, because it's like, oh, but then most robberies are definitely white. Like, so it's that kind of stuff. And whatever happens, most white people do it in this country because mostly white people, fine. I don't know the correlation. Personally, I just don't understand the correlation between people coming to the UK and the strain on resources. I think it's very difficult to get to the UK.
I don't think it's just difficult to get here. I think it's difficult once you're here to access anything.
It's very difficult to, number one, because I think a lot of the people saying you're coming here, they're not talking about the uni students.
Trust me.
Because they don't see the uni students, because they don't know what uni student is going to be around you that you can see. And it's not rudely. If you have that mentality, you probably are isolated from the main cities.
London.
You're probably, yeah. So then there's that. Then it's like, as you said, it's difficult to access resources here anyway. Even if we did access resources, and I say we, those who are not white but live in Britain, we can't be the majority anyway. And so what happens is that the media have a particular audience, and their audience are the people who can't verify the facts, and those people who rely on cultural wars to make sense of a changing world. And that's what's always happened. A lot of the white working class, not to blame them for everything, but they have been strategically made ignorant, because they were in the UK, they were the original slave people in the UK anyway, because they were not seen as white until different coloured people came to the country, or they had colonialism. They were very separate from here. And in fact, the reason why they used black people and Asian people across the world is because there was more of us that they could use in different countries. We could survive different countries physically as well. So it's like they couldn't even use the people here, and they were living poor lives. And so now what's happened is that now we've come face to face, the working class and then the immigrant group. They have to be like, you know what, it's better that we give white working class access to whiteness. Because what is the white working class? How can you call them the white working class? It's because you need to distinguish them between the people who are naturally godlike, inherently superior because they're white. They realise that actually white people can be poor, or white people cannot be smart, and white people are suffering in school. But it goes against the purity of whiteness.
Yeah,
but
what we've been preaching for years.
There we go. So they're trying to make sense of that. And for white working class people, are like, raw, so there's people who don't look like me who are living well. I thought, Then that conversation has come up in the last couple, 20, 30, 40 years, where it's like, immigrants are bad because this and that, our country's bad. No, the reason why the North is not developed is because they don't invest in the North. I'm sorry, how many of us are even in the North for us to affect your income? Nobody's in the North.
We
investing in
people of colour don't go where there's not any other people.
There we
of
go.
colour,
We don't go there because we're scared of you. And if there's no job, why did I go there?
Even before we go on holiday, we Google
places where do they like us? So
am I safe?
So that, and I think that's the big NHS is a good example of that. Of it's propaganda. It's just propaganda, and unfortunately, your media. That's why the Sun newspaper's not marketed at the educated. The Sun newspaper can only market people who take their politics as 6-word phrases on the front page. They've never changed their agenda. They've always done that, and they market the same types of people because those people can't see it for what it is. And it's no disrespect to them. It's just the fact that at some point you have to wake up and realise that, forget race, you didn't get the £350 NHS promise. When are you going to wake up? But you don't want to. You want to fight wrong and strong. And the only thing more important than reality is sometimes inherent belief in your superiority. So believe the white pure agenda and see where it gets you.
Well, we know where it gets you broke.
Wait, cost of living crisis, they told you.
Okay, switching gears slightly to back to the climate. At the moment, there is a scramble going on for the Arctic.
Yes, sir.
How do you feel that compares? Because it has been compared to like the scramble for Africa and the scramble for Asia that happened, via their forefathers. Now, obviously, we're a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, maybe, I don't want to say intelligent because that isn't the case, a bit more structured and a bit more human rights than we were then. So because the Arctic borders on so many other countries like Canada, Russia, I think some Scandinavian countries as well, they all want access to the Arctic. For context, the Arctic has shown, when the ice caps have melted and are melting rapidly in this case, that there is rich resources underneath that for centuries we obviously haven't been able to access. And that's now brought up in the conversation about, can we access, and companies like BP, Shell, all of them have already applied for like planning permission basically and digging rights. These lot are trying to dig deep to get that first, and then obviously here we go. So how do you feel about that? I think I know the answer already, but I'm trying to work out if there's anything extra than what I feel you might feel with the context you have of politics.
I think, first of all, there's no people there. So the tragedy, the nicest way I can put that time, that affected thousands, millions of people.
Through colonialism.
Colonialism, through, all that stuff, imperialism, whatever, whichever version, cannot be compared. There's no humans there. That we're aware of, there's no humans. Not to say animals are not important, but it cannot be compared, or never can be compared, because you don't have human inhabitants there that you can ever compare to the lives that you ruined
and continue
to ruin. So in that respect, it can never be comparable, and it's insulting. However, if you now reduce human beings to capital, and you reduce the quest that people have, and you strip it of racism and all that stuff, and just go, actually, people are just greedy, they just want money by any means, then the parallels can be drawn. Because what you're trying to do is, the ice caps are melting, so there's more opportunity to get resources. People only want resources so they can improve the lives of their citizens or have more money and more influence over the world. And so the scramble of Africa and Asia was a representation of that. They thought that not only are they superior to these people, they want to have stakes in their resources that don't belong to them. The parallel thing that's happening now is that we are stealing from nature, right? We're going through climate change, and therefore the intention isn't to preserve, it's to extract. And therefore, if you see nature as a thing to protect, then it's a war on nature. Because we are going through a climate crisis and something is melting, but instead of you to see how you can slow that melting down or to protect it, your idea is see how much we can drill. Makes no sense to me. And it shows that we haven't learned anything, right? But then it also brings up other questions about land and who owns what, and security and military, and how you can have, if you have more land is very scarce in this world right now. The more land you have, especially for places like China with a large population, the more places that you can get people to live in and have, and then your quality of life can go up and stuff like that. So on a trade routes, I think they said if the Arctic melts, then it will bring Europe and Asia 40% closer.
Yeah.
And it becomes a place you can pass through.
And it basically, they did a thing where they're talking about how they're gonna make it open in like off-peak seasons kind of thing, where it's summer, and so all the ice is melted. And they did a trial of that, and I think they saved something, a couple trillion tons of fuel, this, of that, and emissions even as well, because the journey is less. Now they can cut through the Arctic to get somewhere. Yeah,
so it's like that will bring it closer, meaning more trade between countries that don't necessarily trade or can trade more cheaply, as you said. But it also brings tensions more, because if you weren't my border, you weren't a threat. Now I'm threatened by more of you in certain ways. As I said, trade, route, and that kind of stuff. And then claims to sovereignty. Sovereignty is the reason why governments exist. You're trying to establish the legitimacy of your land and be like, if we own this, and technically, the more land you own, the bigger your seat at the table in political thingy. If you only have 100%, like 10 people in your country, and you have a small bit of land, you're not strategically important. But once you have more land and you're centered in a certain place and you're involved in trade routes, you are actually more important.
Not to mention the riches and in that place.
Exactly. And therefore you have more diplomatic importance in international conversations. So it's a big deal. But one of the things, as I mentioned before, is that it's not to preserve the environment, and time is ticking for us. So the fear is that we've learned nothing. What we've done is go, cool, instead of protecting what we have, there's more places to ruin. And so let's go there and not deal with what's at home. And so we're going nowhere fast, basically.
And if we started to use, because in my mind, obviously, humans are humans and we are a horrible evolution of what has been laid out for us in capitalism. So they're going there.
Yeah.
And when they go there and they find those gases and natural riches that we can run off.
Yeah.
Is there positives in that? Does that mean my energy bills will come down again, or?
There's positives depending on who you are. Positives if you're BP or Shell. You've got places to take from, especially when other countries might be giving you a green tax. Now I've got a place to get it from. Countries that never really used to have oil in their own reserves, it means that you can lessen your reliance on other countries that politically you're against, it gives you strength against Putin, I guess, and Putin also has claims to it, so it's like we need to get that. Positives of anything politically or economically it's not about intrinsic positives, it's about the decisions you make. So with anything like that, they could find all this oil and give it to an African nation or Asian nation to improve their standard of life. That's going to be positive, but it's not a requirement of you. So there's positives. We can find positives for it. It could be like, great, we've got this access. Okay, cool. Now we can use it in our reserves. Or we can build this or build something that protects this area or whatever it is. But history has shown that we don't do that. My issue is that why would we think that there's going to be positives? I don't think there's any positives other than cheaper flights, cheaper travel to Asia. Anyone want to go to Asia in between like a work season? Maybe it might be cheaper for you to go. That's a positive. But the more people that go, I wonder what the prices will be like. I wonder who is going to have access to that. And I just wonder what that would mean for emissions anyway, because it's cheaper to put up.
But at what price?
Because now there's going to be more frequent travel in a place that never used to emit this emissions. So it might cost 10p now. It used to cost 30p in another route. Now it costs 10p. Well, the 30p one, right, more expensive, but I did that twice a day. So it's 60p worth for fuels, right? But this is cost 10p cheaper, but I'm doing it 100 times. So now I'm spending £1 on a trip that I used to spend 60p on, but I'm going to tell everyone it's cheaper. That's how it ends up not being cheaper.
Okay.
I promise I'll try. And next thing you ask me, I'm going to try to find something positive in it and do that.
Yeah, but there isn't any. That's the beauty of this. Because we're learning that there is no point. And that brings me again to my next thing, which I unfortunately don't even want to ask because I know what you're going to say. Okay, there's this big issue with people not voting.
Right.
People our age.
Right.
And younger.
So 16-year-olds.
Literally. 19-year-olds.
19.
The Gen Z, shall I say? Gen X. Them young people don't want to vote. And I understand why. I'll be honest. I really understand why. Because you look up and you see all these forces that are making decisions that are directly affecting you. None of them have your interests at heart. None of them are helping you. And none of them look like you. So how can they know what's going to be best for you? What do you say to that?
I say that I agree with you. Life doesn't seem to care about your individual opinion. And the people that you were told are working in your best interest or should be working in your best interest have shown time and time again that they aren't. And I know you're tired. And I know you've seen your parents, older siblings say the same thing, have the same hopes, and they've ended with nothing. So you're kind of like, I'm not going to be as dumb as you. 100% believe that. However, what I will say, like I said in a previous episode, is that
the control you can have.
Yeah, like this is one of many avenues you can affect change. Just because it's not important to you right now in your peripheral vision or whatever, it doesn't mean that it's not important at a certain time. There will be certain elections that are very strategic. And when people go, we had the Tory party for 12 years, that's not by mistake. That's because people did not vote for the parties that they wanted. Or if they did vote for the Tory party, then it give them pressure to do the policies that you really wanted. So politicians, they lie, manipulate, abuse power, but they cannot act independently. They require a base. And that's why when elections come, if they didn't need your vote, they would not be spending money on adverts. So what you need to do is like, great, cool, so you need me. Right, make them work for that vote. Make them work for the vote. And vote in a way that shows no pattern. So therefore they're scared and they have to do it. When you vote and you vote the same way, or you never vote, or you only vote the same way, they know who to get, it's fine. But when you scare them, Brexit, and I think Brexit, the beauty of Brexit, should there be ever a word associated with Brexit, is the fact that it changed everything. It didn't matter what your dad used to vote for. Now there's a new question to pose to you that you might have never asked yourself before. Now everyone had to think. It was like, what's Labour doing? Oh, Labour isn't the Remain party. It's just mixed with everyone. Tories weren't the Leave Party, it was mixed. So now I couldn't just vote how my party voted because my party wasn't voting a certain way. So what I would say is that the way the world is going, there's going to be a lot more conversations that require new thinking. The old world has changed. And now we're in a place where it's like, actually, there's a lot of laws coming about technology that only those of us existing now can answer or influence. Conversation about politics and power. Conversation about education. And people want to change the education system generally now. They've realised that university isn't actually what the tool it's supposed to be or whatever it is. There are conversations coming that you can shape. And it's probably age specific. You don't want to vote now, but you will end up getting to a place where social media is not going to be your politics, and you're going to actually have to go to the election thing and put in a ballot and go, I care about this. So I agree with you. You're not unique in the sense that we all grew up thinking that politics wasn't for us, but I don't think apathy and not engaging has ever has improved your life either.
What a way to answer that. That is so, so true, because you can sit there being like, yeah, fuck this, what's the point? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, how much has that served you?
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? In that respect, if you're going to go from that level, it's like, well, I did nothing and my life is peak, but when I need something to change, because I have no avenue to influence change, there's no point. Whereas at least it gives you the hope of going, right, I want this change. I've got an avenue that I can influence. It gives you something to work towards. So I just always feel like doing nothing is just never the right option, because it leaves you with nothing, only your bitterness. And then what do you do with bitterness? You then start other people who could make change, not make change because they inherited your bitterness. The truth is with politics is that no one knows who's got the magic key to the answers, right? It's just life. You hope that people are saying the right thing or the wrong thing. And what I don't want is someone who actually might end up having the magic key, the Corbyn of the future or whoever it is. But because he was disincentivized to engage in politics, we've got Corbyns that are wasting their talents. Everyone has that family member who's so good at politics and you're thinking, why are you not a politician? The light has dimmed and it's not their fault. But the issue is if you dim it in someone else's light who could have the key, the right amount of charisma, the intelligence, the interest, the energy, then don't ever stop them from doing that. Do you know what I'm saying? Every once again, we get a Mandela or we get a Malcolm X. Imagine their parents were like, politics is dumb. We would have none of them. So my thing is that you just never know who's going to be. That's why I always try and be like, whoever might see this actually might be able to make a change. It might not be me, but I hope one of you guys do it. And then when they get older, like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Not because I feel like it has to be associated with me, but just because it's like, fine, I might not be the MP that everyone thinks I'm going to be. But I'm okay to have influenced somebody to realise that dream. And that's all it really is.
One from the people that I know everyone by this point is wondering, why can't you be the MP? And that's a serious question. Like, what is it? That's why you're getting a couple of scratching and that. You don't want to answer
do you know what it is? Do you know what it is?
You must get that at least 50 times a day.
I get that. So I get that all the time, literally. Yeah. And I think it's just...
I think you're too real, if I'm honest.
I think it's one of those ones where it's like reality, not reality, because I don't say I think it's real life happens. And where real life means that politics is not... I might say this quite seamlessly because I've managed to have an interest in something that also is something that the public needs to know about. However, it requires work to keep up to date. It requires work to kind of develop an opinion. It requires work to kind of stay up to date. So I think when real life hits you, like I suffered from COVID too. You know, I experienced that. Cost of living affects me too. So I can't, in spite of that, still have the same political fortitude all the time. But once I feel better, I can step into that. And I feel like even next year, I will definitely do more. Don't worry, I'll do more.
Are we saying campaign and... Rishi, watch out.
Do you know what I mean? Watch out, Rishi. You never know. You never know. Generally, you never know.
You heard that here first. You understand? Maya's minutes.
Yeah, exactly. This is it. This is what they're going to bring out. When I run for Prime Minister one day, they'll bring out this clip and go, she said it.
This is it.
See,
and I want my money.
I always say, if anyone wants me to do these things, I'm good. But I always say to them, but are you, especially if it's media platforms, but are you committed to taking the place of the Sun and Rupert Murdoch? Those are the real forces that are at play here. Rupert Murdoch is probably, and the Sun and all that stuff, are the most influential. They were involved in the Brexit conversations. They're involved in every leadership context.
Yeah, they control everything.
They're involved in the Trump election. So my thing is that those of you with platforms like yourself, Maya Minutes, and everyone else who's doing it in some way, you're not just bringing out content for content's sake because you like it. You have to understand that you should have a mission to dwarf the media platforms that have been miseducating society.
And bring out realness instead.
Bring it out. Because them lot are aggressive with it, with less intelligence. So you lot got the intelligence, you got the access, you have to be as aggressive. And that's all I'll say. So the likes of me, if you want me to be there,
facilitate it.
It's never been the individual. It's always been the village. It's always been a media company that's gonna, I like you, bring him on.
Yeah.
It's the individual doesn't matter. We know how many charismatic people do we know, but it's you need to make sure that there's a movement. And Corbyn didn't have the media,
All the likes.
you know. So that's the difference. Corbyn can be right all day long, but the media was not on his side.
Wow. I mean, I would love for this to be... I mean, you running would be the right side of history. Anyway. That would be amazing. Yeah. I think as well, and this is the last thing we'll say before we round this up, but what a last episode it's been. A lot of people, I get this to a degree, where people push me into being like, oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do that. And it's like people see a go-getter or a doer and they're like, oh, let me piggyback off that. And it does F me off to a point because I'm just like, do I not need sleep? Do I not need to eat? Like, do you know what I mean? And I hear you, which is that I can do it, but you definitely need to facilitate. So this is another example. The amount of people who've said to me, podcast or some kind of, people like to hear me talk, do you know what I mean? As with yourself. So the amount of people that say these things to us, and they're like, put a podcast together, do a YouTube channel, do a this, do a that. So when I've now done that, as we can see and hear, why are you not resharing?
Yeah, why are you not engaging?
Why are you not listening?
Why not checking in? Why not doing that?
Why are you not offering me money?
Yeah.
Why are you not paying my bills? Do you know what I mean?
Not saying, oh, I've got a studio space you can use for free, come and do this, or I can create your
logo
this is lovely, I can create this logo, like... There's a lot, and I think that is what people forget about the role. People genuinely feel like it was Obama himself that got him there. It wasn't. It was a particular tide. It's a lot also about luck. But he had to have the institutional backing. Some institution had to really want him there. He had to have certain people to endorse it and go, cool, he's okay. So it is a village. And I always say anyone that we know is famous in that, they are the cherry or they are the tip of the iceberg. When you look underwater and you look under the iceberg, it's the producers, it's the runners, it's all these people that are doing it for you. The talent turns up, that's what they got to do, but there's a lot of work that goes into that. And same with everything else. There's the people that we see, the MPs, they're the most harmless of them all.
Okay, so in the spirit of putting things out there, what would it take as a baseline for you, village-wise? What do you need to see for you to know? I know I'm putting you on the spot, I'm sorry, but I don't care.
When have you ever cared? Let's be real.
All right. What do you need? Everyone, you're hearing this. Tell me, what do you need?
What?
Go on.
I think what I need...
Number one
for me, I need discipline and focus.
Okay, but who can give you that? What does that look like?
I think what I need is... I just need people to check... This is going to sound very lazy, but people to remind me that my voice is needed.
Okay, so you need the validation and acknowledgement.
Accountability. I need accountability.
Someone's catting on you.
Yeah, someone's like, yo, I haven't seen nothing from you. Hurry up. This is what I like going to.
Cool. DMs filled.
I think I also need, like, people like yourselves... have you, but people like yourselves, where it's like,
Check.
You've got a platform where I can speak, because it's not the same person who speaks necessarily has to have the platform.
Nope, totally.
So there's
also you've got different strengths.
Exactly.
If there's someone who can facilitate that, they should be facilitating that.
Do you know? So there's things like that, and there's obviously resources that people can throw. I wouldn't know from the top of my head, but there's probably opportunities, and I think one of the biggest things, and I hope you speak about another show or with someone else or something, when you get into like social media tech, algorithms, attention economy, the biggest things I think that people need is like, I can't explain it, it's like
exposure.
People need opportunities. People don't like to give people opportunities. They like to, that'll be good.
Trust me.
You're working in a whole industry where you could platform somebody, but you're like, that's good. It's like, have you not made the link between what you do every day and what this person is?
The amount of times in my life, we've gone off topic and we definitely need to leave because we're late. But the amount of times in my life where I have been having conversations with people who work directly in what I'm trying to do, and they're looking in my face and I'm saying, I really need a da-da-da-da, and they're just saying, oh, swear down. Are you all right? You could say, like, for example, you said to me on passing, I want to do X for my birthday.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I know someone. I've messaged that person. I've got the thing and I sent it to you.
She did.
Because and you didn't need to ask me for that. Because to me, I'm like, oh, she needs that. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Why are people not like that? What is wrong with them?
Some personalities, people are just like, they're really just out there. But I think also the crabs in the bucket thing is still real. It's still real. It's still very much like...
Only room for one of us.
Or like, oh my God. Or sometimes people don't even believe in you. Realistically, they like it. People love people who are already on the cusp of blowing or have blown. So it's like, oh yeah, I did that to someone who's gonna blow. It's like me now giving Stormzy a mic now.
Trust
Ooh,
me.
I was part of your story. No, I
Yeah.
wasn't. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when Stormzy hasn't got the followers, do you really believe in him? Can you see a spark and go, you know what, here's the mic? Those are the people that transform people, and those people that always get mentioned when they do awards. It's like, thank you. Because you're thinking, why are you my friend Gary? Because Gary was there every night before I was who I was, telling me that my mixtape's hard.
Trust me.
Even though I've only got 5 listens a month, he was saying, go hard, bro.
Trust me.
But you that's listened to me when I'm now a Grammy-nominated artist is telling me I'm hard. I mean, for me to even bring out an album, I must be hard. Like, you're a bit far into the thing, so. But yeah, I think there's a lot there, but yeah.
Wow. Well, I know there's a lot of things that we can already be doing to get her up, but I just want to see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, have you enjoyed doing this series?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah?
I loved it. And I think this
Come back
series,
soon?
100%, and this series has played a strategic role in my 2023. 100%.
Don't gas me.
100%
Don't
it
play
has.
with me.
100% it
because
has.
you're playing with me right now.
I'm not. Yes, 100%. Like, I haven't done this in ages.
Oh, I know.
And it's like, it's reminding me that, yes.
This is where you need to be. This is
good.
the acknowledgement you're talking about. The accountability
Yeah, the
and all that
acknowledgement
stuff.
and stuff like that. And
now I know that I'm going to message you every morning, just so you know.
Listen,
saying, we need you up, babe. Up and out.
Listen, I will show you a plan. Towards the end
Okay,
of the
this
year.
is getting too much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. Thank you so much. I didn't even
you.
give your credentials. I mean, by now it's irrelevant because you can see she's bare smart. But she studied at
London School of Economics, and I studied economic history.
amazing. So yeah, as you can hear, pure gems, pure, and I knew it would be from day when we first chopped it up. This is just willing to happen. So I'm so happy you made it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone who's listened thus far. I know you're all gassed and following her by this point and ready to get her in office. Did we say that here? It's not in office here, is it?
Yeah,
Parliament?
in office.
Parliament.
In office. You can say office.
All right, in office. And yes.
Or number 10.
Number 10, second series, Maya's Minutes, over and out. Peace.
Yes, peace.
Bye.
I didn't look at the camera. That was really fun. That was really good.
Good.
We went different places, and it was good places.
Good, I'm glad. And it all links together, really.
Really does. It was really well done, man.
Thank you, well done for coming and being part of it. And
Of
I don't mean
course.
that in a condescending way. I mean, like, you've got shit in your life. I hear that. And you made the time, and I really, really appreciate it.